Hey, and welcome to this next episode of Safety. This week we're going to be discussing Hazard Communications, the HAZCOM program. Get my laser pointer going here. So, a couple of keywords and a couple of spots in this module, you'll see the abbreviation. So, slide one, if you wanted to go back, it's the HCS, the Hazard Communication System, and the GHS, the Global Harmonizing System. So we'll see those acronyms or those abbreviations periodically throughout here. So that's what they are. Just a couple of the objectives. We're going to discover what the employer's responsibilities are, components of the HAZCOM program, the HCS, requirements of the labels that we see, and the location of pertinent information that we find on those labels. So just a little case study here. If you open up the actual PowerPoint in the notes section, it talks about this. Just a real quick synopsis of what it basically says is there was a chemical leak, a chemical spill in the lab. The vapors got into the HVAC system. A lot of people ended up getting sick, and an individual cleaned up the chemical, disposed of it. Apparently this particular chemical is called, I saw it, xylene. I don't know what that is, but apparently it has a flash point of 75 degrees Fahrenheit. So they sopped it up, put it down into the incinerator room, and it basically acted as a bomb. 12 people ended up going to the hospital for that. So, with the proper following of an HCS, a lot of this stuff would have been mitigated. So that's the whole purpose of this particular module, is to learn about how to mitigate the possibilities for chemical reactions, not only chemical reactions, but exposure to dangerous chemicals. These are all estimates based on OSHA, but they believe, and it's probably based on historical data, that they're saving approximately 43 lives per year and 585 illnesses, almost $500 million in increased productivity. So obviously these are all estimates, but they're basing these estimations on the increases of safety over time. How is it done? With the hazard classifications, the labels, and the SDSs, which we're gonna learn about in the following slides. So these are the 7 major elements of a GHS HCS. I got to look on the other thing to read them all. Training, the SDS, the labels, signal words, hazard statements, toxic if swallowed, toxic if inhaled, precautionary statements, rinse mouth, do not induce vomiting, and the pictograms. You've probably have seen a lot of these things and warning labels in chemicals at home. So all of that has to do with basically legislation that's been created to help people to decrease the possibility of injuries and death, illness, and so on and so forth. A lot of employee responsibilities under the HCS. Labels on incoming chemicals. Big thing, you order something, it comes in, it needs to be labeled. You need to know exactly what's on there. Maintaining the SDS, the safety data sheet. We're going to learn about that here in a little bit, but maintaining it from the shipments. If you don't have an SDS, you have to obtain it. Every single chemical out there that is utilized in the U.S. has an SDS. Every single chemical. You can, from bleach that you have, the cleaning chemicals for your kitchen, even gasoline, every single thing has an SDS. Dust, certain dust things. So it's out there, it's available. You can go to Granger's website, you can even Google it, you'll find the SDSs. Ensuring that these SDSs are readily accessible. Here's our book. Just hit myself. Here's our book that we have in the shop, our SDS book. We're going to cover that. We'll see that in a little bit. This is in the shop if you want to see, if you've never seen one. This is up on the wall. You can come and ask me if you wanted to physically see what one looks like. Training for employees is important. And then information access employees in the multi-employer workplaces. So if you have contractors and things of that effect. And then developing and implementing a hazard communication program. It says right here, a hazard communication program for Fayetteville Tech Machine Shop. So all of those things are the responsibilities of the employer. Where'd my mouse go? There it is. So how does it work? Basically, you receive chemicals, you receive the SDS, you implement the program, and keeping the information up to date. Sometimes chemical compositions change. If they change, they have to be updated in the SDS, because the old stuff, the old documentation is not going to be valid for that. Requirements for the written program. Obviously, and we saw in the paper there, develop, implement, and maintain that communication program. It's really important. It's ensuring the compliance is, you have to ensure compliance with OSHA's regulations is basically what that amounts to. Okay, so the hazard communication program. Obviously, it requires the written aspect of it, and that's what we have here. In this entire thing, this is the entire hazard communication program. Listing of hazardous chemicals that are on site here in the machine shop, the availability of the SDS. These are all of the SDSs in here. Labeling of the containers. You cannot have unlabeled containers. Big thing. Obviously, this is a water bottle, but I've been in shops before where this is exactly how it looks when you have a chemical. They'll put a chemical in there, unlabeled, very, very dangerous. It's obviously illegal to do. So those are the types of things. These things need to be labeled. And then the training programs, ensuring that you have a development implementation of that training program regarding all of the chemicals that the individual may be using in their workplace, in their work site. Hazardous chemicals, the product identifier. So on the paperwork, you'll have the product name, a common name or chemical name. I wish that I could come off the top of my head and think of a product name and then the common name, but I cannot. A lot of times you'll have those chemistry names or something to that effect. And then you'll have the common name because people can't pronounce the chemical name. All of that information, it's in the SDS. You put it on the label on the container. Having an inventory of all your chemicals. If you have the chemical, as I said, you need the SDS for it. And it does all chemicals in all forms, whether contained or not. So if you have a container that has the chemical in it, or if you have something that's in a vat that is mixed or something for that example, and you have to have that SDS as well. Basically, and notice where it says it includes chemicals, containers, pipes, and those generated by work operations. So if you're doing something and it produces an off gas, there needs to be an SDS on that off gas. So literally, it is everything in your workplace. So the SDS we saw here, available and accessible. It's hanging up every single workplace I've ever been in. This, by law, is required to be put up, and it needs to be accessible. Workers can go over there and read about the chemicals that they're working with. 16 section format, we see here in the little star there. One of the things as well, note on there, if you cannot find an SDS on that chemical, it's illegal to use. You need to find some sort of substitute. You can't just come up and say, well, it's out there, can we use it? No, you can't. So the hazard communication program, person responsible for obtaining and maintaining SDS, that would essentially be me or Nat, the other instructor here in the machine shop. because it is our shop. We're required to maintain this. How are they maintained? Procedures if it's not retained or obtained with the first shipments. We've had to go to Granger's website and go through and find SDSs for chemicals that we've had in the shop. Bluing remover, acetone, rubbing alcohol, denatured alcohol, our coolants, the machine oils, all of that stuff. And we have to have, like I said, we have to have the SDS for each single chemical. So these are the 16 sections. I'm not going to read them all. I know that you can read and look through them yourselves. They are located as well. Every single SDS that you get is in this book. So when I open the book and we see it's tabbed here on the side, heat treat, paint, spray oils, coatings, balloon remover, and so on and so forth. As you go through, every one of them has those 16 sections that are required in the SDS format. Next page basically has the remaining 9 through 16. Example of format of the SDS. So we see the product. I have to look over here because it's blurry over here. The product name, the SDS number, product use, all of those things, classifications, pictograms, signal words. Labeling, all chemicals need to be labeled. I don't have any right here. We have like spray bottles in the shop. They need to be labeled. Coolant or cleaner or whatever, they need to be properly labeled. Warnings, and then snapshot of the hazards and protective information. So we're going to learn about the hazard and protective information we learned from last week. PPE is basically what they're asking for. What is the required PPE for those? The labeling, you go through, obviously things need to be labeled. Stationary containers, they also have what they consider secondary labeling, workplace containers. How are things labeled? So you can have the primary labeling, and then you have the secondary labeling. So the primary would be you get the stuff in, secondary you put it into a spray bottle. Those spray bottles need to be labeled with some of the information to go back to the main, so that way they're not having to go back and forth. And obviously, once again, you have to identify what the chemical is. It can't be just an empty spray bottle. When I first came in, and we had spray bottles here, and we're not opposed to having things brought to our attention. If you find a spray bottle in the shop, it's not labeled, you let us know. We have labels around here. We can label it with what it is, and to make sure that everybody is staying safe. Obviously, procedures for reviewing, updating workbooks. We periodically do review this. Right now, it's about an annual. Basically, when we get our audits, we go through and we'll take care of labeling it. Shipping labels, big thing, the name, address, telephone number of the company that has produced the chemical. Product identifier, we can hardly read it on here, but it's got the information in there. This is the supplier information. Signal words, we see right here. Signal words right there. I have the big circle. The precautionary statements, where are they on here? Right in here. These are all the precautionary statements. And then the pictograms that we see there. So, workplace labels, like I said, secondary labels. You can create your own labeling system for that's going to work for you as an employer, as something, or as employees, something that works and makes sense. You can do the same label as required, or alternative label, provided the general information is there. Obviously, training. We went back a couple slides ago, about a dozen slides ago. Training is important. It can be in place, and you can have all of these standards set in place, but if no training's been done, it's pointless. Training requirements. So now we get into talking about training. You have to be trained before the initial assignment. New hazards, non-routine tasks. Non-routine. If you're not used to dealing with a certain chemical or something, obviously you get assigned to a new area, you need to be trained on that. Included in the training, the methods to be able to, chemical handling, how to work with it if chemicals are spilled. That individual in the case study did not receive training on what happens if that chemical gets spilled. The hazards of it, what makes this particular this chemical hazardous, protective measures, PPE, what need to be done on that, and then how do you provide get additional information? It's SDS. It's right there, and if it's not there, you can find it and look it up. Different types of labels. DOT has their own thing. The NFPA 704 labels. There's all sorts of different types of labels out there that apply to this. Shipping products, shipping labels. So we see here basically it's all the same stuff as on the shipping label and the other labels. Oh, where's my pointer? There it is. All of that stuff is already there. So it's kind of across the board type thing where this information is in there. It's no specific like this is the order it needs to be in, but that information is there. So here's an example of a label. We see some different things on there. Let me hit the next button. So we've got the name, the address, the contact information. We have the product identifier. How is it identified? Got a star there. Signal word. There are two and only two signal words. Danger is severe. Danger, severe, and warning is for less severe. So there's only two: danger and severe. Or I'm sorry, danger and warning. I was, how you look at a word and you say it when you're reading it. Danger and warning are the only two signal words that the HAZCOM program allows you to use. Pictogram, specifics about the hazard. If I go to the next slide, here's the pictogram. And actually every single one here I can go through and click through them. Health hazards, carcinogen, I guess it mutates, reproductive toxicity, aspiration toxicity, flammable, self-heating, explanation bark, narcotic effects, respiratory tract irritant, skin and eye irritant, skin sensitizer. What's the next one? There it is. Gas cylinders. You see those if you're in welding. We actually have some way in the back room here. We have some welding in here. Corrosion. Exploding bomb. Nice. Flame over a circle. There it is. Flame over a circle is an oxidizer. Star. Not required by OSHA. An environmental hazard. Spilled in a lake. What happens? It's bad. And then the skull and crossbones. That's obviously the worst. It's acute toxicity. It's fatal or toxic if you become in contact with that particular chemical. So we see here the symbol in the red flame, signal word here, hazard statement, extremely flammable, keep away from heat, open flames, and then you have all the rest of the pertinent information. It's the hazard statement, as I already said that. It describes the nature of the chemical, extremely flammable gas. Precautionary statements, the actions that should be taken. I'm sure on that other chemical, xylene, it probably says don't mop up and place into the incinerator because it's got a 75-degree flash point. Workplace labels, some requirements for them, some examples that they have here. It's the same information that the manufacturer product identifier, signs, placard, process sheets. All of that information is placed on that particular workplace label. Some different types. So we have something similar to this label that we use here in the shop. See, it's just promoted for workplace labels, my secondary labels. If we go through, This is essentially what they have. It's a diamond with 4 diamonds in it. It's based on the NFPA 704. If I hit the next, we start to fill them in. So this is going to be slide 32. I don't have this uploaded or anything like that. If you wanted to download it, I mean, I guess you can look up NFPA 704, because these things are kind of neat. I've always wondered what these were. You know, you see them on the highway all the time. You see them on the bottles in the shop. What do they actually mean? So health hazards are your blues, different numbers from 0 to 4. Flammability from 0 to 4 is your red. Instability hazards are your yellow from, once again, 0 to 4. And your white is any special hazards, W, OX, and SA. So if I go to the next here, it's an example. In the notes, it tells me what it is. It's got a number 2, it's a moderate health hazard, highly flammable with a flash point of less than 73 degrees. It is normally stable and reactive to water. So basically, do not use water around this. HMIS label, it's kind of the same concept, how they lay things out for you. Everything's from 0 to 4. So I go to the next here. There we go. Once again, 0 to 4. If there's an asterisk in there, it's a chronic health hazard. Flammability from 0 to 4. And the physical hazard, 0 to 4. And then PPE. And they just give you different letters based on that. So yeah, I mean, granted, nobody's going to memorize this stuff unless you're some sort of industrial hygienist or something, you know, with that degree for this. But these things are available. If you're ever looking at them, well, what does that is? You know, what does that number do? You can go look at the charts, and they'll kind of break it down for you what they do. So in this example here, this particular product is considered ammonium hydroxide. Health hazard, it's a chronic hazard, moderate hazard that may cause temporary or minor injury. Material will not burn. It's normally stable. And then J, PPE includes goggles, gloves, apron, dust, and vapor respirators. This is all the notes on the slide if you were to pull the slide up. And the last thing, the DOT shipping labels, graphic elements, where the container is also used, DOT classification. So when we look in the SDS, like I said, and that is the last slide, but when we look in the SDS, so here's my hazard communication program. Let me get it in front of me here, like I'm reading a book. Hazard communication program, my tabs, you can see the tabs here. Tabs identify in groups as I go. Here are the SDSs. Like I said, we get the, actually no, this is the table of contents. So table of contents, if you're looking for a specific thing, and then you start getting into the chemicals as you go. It has your 13 sections, or 16, I'm sorry. I'm reading the number 13. You go through and it has all of the information that it is that you're looking for. In this particular one, this is just paint. Lists off all of the various issues with this paint in the 16 sections as you go. Received from Granger, it's the SDS. Some of you may have heard the term MSDS. I believe in 2016, OSHA did away with that term and came in with the SDS. The SDS is an updated style of being able to track all of the chemicals. There's a video, MSDS versus SDS, what's the difference? Short 2-minute video, you can watch that. And I tried looking, I don't know, I guess you guys have been looking, liking the YouTube videos. The only thing I can find is a lady who does some sort of mixture in her kitchen, pool chemicals. Awesome explosion. It actually blows up for the entire minute that video is. So anyway, if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know what you're doing, you need to look this up. I was actually, when I was in high school, I was a bagger at a grocery store, and one of the things they said is don't mix ammonia and bleach. Creates a chemical, creates a very dangerous gas. Don't mix fertilizer and diesel. You know, these are you know, things, if they go through it, it makes what was it, ammonium nitrate. You know, these are chemicals like fertilizer and diesel are something that a farmer would have at their farm. You know, and having that spillage, you can end up creating explosions. So that's the purpose of the MSD, or I'm sorry, I'm so used to saying MSDS. Been doing it for 20 years, so that's the purpose of the SDS, to make sure that you, as the employee, stays safe on the job work site, even in your house too. So anyway, with that discussion board quiz, any questions, come and see me. And thanks for tuning in this week. We'll see you next week.